Okay, calling to order the meeting of the Kitsap Public Facilities District. Let's see, we'll move right on to public comments. Do we have?
Let me take a look here and see. I know I actually got an email from Mr. Anderson that said he was having a difficult time getting in. So let me just see. Yeah, no, I don't have him logged in yet. So I don't see any raised hands. So no, at this time, I don't have anybody wanting to make public comment.
Okay, we'll move to item 3, which is approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, do we have any discussion? All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
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 All
Aye.
not in favor? Okay, so the consent agenda is approved. And next we'll move on to the facility progress report with the Poulsbo project. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, board. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm Carla Boughton. I'm Special Projects Planner with the City of Poulsbo. I have been your staff lead on the PERC, the Poulsbo Event and Recreation Center, for the last couple of years. And it is my pleasure tonight to present to you the feasibility final report. But with me tonight, I'd like to introduce some special guests that I have with me. We have Mayor Becky Erickson, Assistant City Administrator Debbie Boer, our brand new Parks and Rec Director Jeff say it again. Osmic. Okay, thank you. Peter Baciuello from PERC, who's been our project manager throughout the duration of this project. Thank you so much for having us, and it's my pleasure to present to you the results of our feasibility study. So with that, Russ, go ahead and move to the next slide. So it's, pardon?
I will be your Vanna.
Okay, thank you. So tonight we'll be presenting the final feasibility report that you did receive a copy of about a week or so ago. We'll go over the phased approach of the PERC. We'll spend some time on the fields first, phase 1 fields first and conceptual site plan. Talk about the targeted market analysis that demonstrates economic development component that you guys need to assure. We'll have operations considerations that's primarily for the city, but want to share those with you, the financial analysis, and then finally our feasibility determination with the 4 criteria. Next slide. This graphic is one that we've presented to you multiple times over the last couple of years, and so I'm happy to report we're at the very bottom there. We are here at number 5. As I mentioned, the PERC final feasibility report was issued last Monday. It is now available on the city's updated PERC webpage. It has been delivered to you all, as well as to the PERC Community Steering Committee. So going through the phased approach, we did present this to you in July and our update to you in July of 2022. We have reorganized and refined the PERC, which was if you'll recall at the beginning, it was tournament fields, an event and recreation center, and potentially a pool. That was what we ran our feasibility analysis through. We have organized these into 3 phases. Phase 1 is our tournament fields. These are 2 turfed and lighted tournament fields with outdoor recreational amenities, picnic team shelters, bleachers, athletic equipment and storage and parking. And this would be at the current PERC site, as you know, is in our northwest corner of our city limits within the College Marketplace development, just south of the Olympic College Western Washington campus and just north of the Home Depot. Depending then on additional land, the city would pursue phase 2 or phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 2 would be an event and recreation center. The center would have indoor recreation gym, other recreation components like rocket courts, perhaps indoor walking track, in combination with classrooms and event space for events, meetings, classes, all designed to be supportive of the Western Washington OC campus to the north. So recall from our initial presentation, that was something very important to the city, was to work in collaboration with our college campus. Through the feasibility study, we did learn that an indoor cold water lap pool is not feasible, and that if there was the most feasible pool would be an outdoor recreation pool for the city of Poulsbo. So that has been programmed as phase 3. Now, this phased approach allows the city and the Kitsap Public Facilities District, you guys, to move forward with phase 1 while the city explores additional acreage and sites for potential phase 2, phase 3, and developing a long-term funding strategy for both of those, because phase 2 and 3, obviously with buildings and aquatics, are more expensive than the 2 turf fields that we're proposing as phase 1. Next slide. So this presents our conceptual site plan of phase 1, fields first. I think we presented this to you, I think in July, but this also has some of the outdoor elements. These, we have north-south and east-west orientated fields that take advantage of the topography, as well as the site size and layout. There is a slope change from the upper field to the lower field. So that center area where there's a playground takes advantage of that change in grade. There will be a retaining wall up at the upper field, so we can have a tiered down approach that would lend itself to a playground area, as well as some outdoor seating area before you get to the lower field. Then continuing going down the site plan, at the bottom we have sports courts, walking path throughout the perimeter of the site. There are team shelters for tournaments. They can be also rented as picnic shelters. We have a concession booth. We have restrooms. So, and then we have the parking lot. A lot of these elements were identified as part of the site concept process with the steering committee for outdoor recreational amenities. We tried to take as many of those as we could and program them on the fringes of the site that were not being used as the turf fields. So moving to our targeted market analysis, we talked a little bit about this last time we were before you. In 2021, when we had our preliminary initial market conclusion that was conducted by PERC Consulting, they determined that if we had 2 tournament fields at the PERC, and in addition to the 2 fields already in Poulsbo that the KPFD helped fund, a decade or so ago at Strawberry Fields, that might be weak in the regional state tournament market, because 6 fields is usually determined to be kind of the minimum number. So with that information, when we moved to our phased approach with the tournament fields, what we did is we did contact Central Kitsap School District and partnered with them to improve field marketability. They have 7 fields that are available, and we can, to support soccer, lacrosse, football tournaments. So we have a letter of support. It was an appendix into the feasibility study, and in combination with the North Kitsap School District Strawberry Fields, the PERC 2 fields, and the CK School District, PERC Consulting then went back and refined their market analysis and found that with those 8 turf and lighted fields within a 15-minute driving radius, that improves the market, and with improved marketability, it does result in a feasible tournament destination. And that's why we're moving forward now with our phase 1 tournament fields. As part of our feasibility study, we did have some management considerations. Again, this is to help inform the city on what obligations the city will have and the maintenance and the operations of the turf fields. And what we found, of course, for those of you who are familiar with turf fields, we have monthly sweeping requirements and we have annual grooming. PERC Consulting recommends annual grooming be done through contracted services. And that monthly sweeping could be done with volunteers, user groups, city staff. And as long as we have ensure that we purchase the appropriate equipment for the monthly sweeping. And what I've been informed by is oftentimes when you buy the turf, what your vendor is, whoever your vendor is that you work with, you get that equipment for that turf. So for sure, we would make sure that we get that. Turf field lifespan is 10 to 13 years. That can be extended a little bit with consistent maintenance. And the feasibility study does note, and again, this is important for our city and city council's consideration, that there will be impacts to city staff, public works, parks and recreation, police departments, and there will be other departments impacted. Our finance department will be impacted as well. And that's just the nature of any new park that comes into the city. But in the case of this, where this would be tournament management, there would be and daily use of basically of daily rentals of these fields. So there will be some impact to city staff. In the feasibility study, there's a bit of an analysis that PERC Consulting did regarding maintenance and replacement costs of the two fields. They did an estimated revenue projection based on daily rentals and tournament days. Then they made a expenditure and revenue analysis with some assumptions, a 10-year replacement plan. They had a 3% annual inflation, but the fees and usage are held constant. So that could be something that, might change. Basically, the conclusion is the PERC fields would be self-sustaining financially for the city until the time of replacement, of which then a capital expenditure of about $750,000 would be necessary to replace the two fields. Again, they're not as expensive as the initial outlay because the foundational work of the ground is already done. So it's really just replacing the turf that sits on top of everything. So what that tells the city is that there will need to be capital replacement budgeting and planning for that day when that day comes, whether it's year 10 or year 15, to ensure that there is funding saved up and ready for that turf replacement. So here is our initial construction cost. This is a preliminary cost estimate. This has been done in conjunction with ARC architects who helped develop, who did develop our conceptual site plan. They gave me an initial cost estimate that then has also been run through city engineering staff who does capital facility projects. And where we're at is one, as well as our new Parks and Rec director, who is in the business of developing new parks. So we are at $11.7 million construction project to build phase one fields first. And this again is just construction. It does include soft costs and a contingency there at the bottom. They are perhaps on the higher end of that, but it was recommended to me by a number of people to go ahead and budget a higher end of that. And on those soft costs, just given the nature of what supply chain issues and what things are costing these days. So they may look high, but it was a recommendation by a number of people to go ahead and estimate that high. As you know, the project needs to be $10 million to be funded by the KPFD. So we're right there in that, we're right there at that project number. There's a chance that we can take away some elements, but we always have to keep that 10 million, of course, in mind. So. So the last piece here before we move into our feasibility determination is our financial analysis. I've been in the last couple months, Russ and I have talked, Russ Shiplet, your executive director, and I've talked numerous times about the financial approach that the PFD would prefer to take to help fund or to fund the 67% of phase one, the PERC phase one. We have talked with our own bond counsel, our finance director, about the request that the city issue debt for the full amount, and then that payment would then be split between the city and the PFD. We are prepared at this point administratively. Of course, the city council makes that final decision. We haven't brought it forward to them, but the mayor is in support, as well as our finance director, with that proposed structure. There are, of course, other opportunities, grant opportunities, legislative earmarks. There's other things that we can be pursuing to help take that cost down for all parties. And so we believe that there is financial feasibility. Well, actually, let me see. Sorry about that. That's my next slide. But we do need to have a long-term financing strategy for phase 2, the actual event building, and phase 3, the outdoor aquatics. And the chapter in the feasibility study does talk about some potential funding options for that. But again, we're not committing to any of those fundings at this time, other than our phase 1, which is the 67-33% split of $11.7 million. So the next couple of slides concludes my presentation to you. This is the feasibility determination of the PERC. The PERC is a feasible public project when it's phased. Under market feasibility, PERC Consulting, as I went over, prepared a market analysis for the PERC elements that is discussed in the feasibility report. There is a feasible market for tournament fields, for rentals by local organizations, and multi-day tournaments, especially in conjunction with our joint marketing effort with local school districts. And the PERC Consulting found that there is a demand for consistent rentals and as a tournament destination. And again, this meets your need to demonstrate economic development criteria. Are people going to be coming into the city, coming and staying at our hotels, and as you know, spending money here in the city? So the answer to that is yes, there has been found to be market feasibility. Next slide. So our next feasibility criteria is site. Can the site support what we're proposing to be located there? Yes, on our 6 and some change acres. We can, while it was challenging from the very beginning to sufficiently site turf fields, a recreation event building, and a pool, once it was reorganized into 3 phases, and our architects ARC refined one of the options that the steering committee considered, option 1, for 2 turf fields and outdoor recreational amenities. Yes, there is site feasibility for the PERC fields first at our current location. Additional acreage or usage of adjacent land property would be necessary for site feasibility for phase 2 and phase 3. Our next feasibility criteria is maintenance and operations. Go ahead. Sorry. The operational feasibility, again, PERC Consulting assisted the city in that with a memorandum that again is in the feasibility study and summarized in one of the chapters. They found that the two lighted turf fields generate weekly rentals, and with their conservative tournament estimate does provide sufficient revenues to be self-sustaining until the turf field replacement is necessary. Again, as noted, there will be a demand on the city staff, but there is operational feasibility for a PERC fields first, with consistent maintenance and a capital replacement reserve financing strategy that the city would be responsible for doing. Therefore, and then not surprising, again, an operational feasibility analysis is going to be necessary for phase 2 and phase 3. And then our final feasibility determination is that the preliminary cost estimates of the PERC is $11.7 million. It's estimated that the city is going to issue debt for the full amount, as we already discussed. The KPFD will finance fund payments for their share, and the city will finance our share. So there is financial feasibility for our PERC phase 1. Okay, Russ, come on. So Mayor Erickson and I are before you tonight to respectfully report that there's market site and operational and financial feasibility for phase one Fields First. And that we're respectfully requesting that this from the board tonight, that you authorize initiation of a second ILA, which would make a funding commitment from the PFD as well as from the city, detail the funding structure and forward the final design, permitting and construction of the PERC phase one Fields First. And we are happy to entertain any questions you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the board?
I've got a question, please. So looking at timeline, we've been looking at when funds become available through our revenue sources. When do you think the bond payments would start to be required?
What we're expecting is 2024 will be our time of permitting, doing final site design, having our civil engineers, having all the details of the land, because what we have right now is just a conceptual site plan. And so what we're looking have that happen in 2023. So we're hopeful and we would like to break ground in 2024.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes. So and maybe I'll start with Russ. Have the feasibility studies been reviewed by Barker Creek?
No, not yet, because we had just gotten them. What I want to do is, with the board's permission, I want to continue to extend the feasibility study out for review to our financial advisors, to our legal counsel, our bond counsel, and then to Barker Creek. So they can take a look at it, see the feasibility of it. And then if the board so moves, then I would then start working with the city on drafting an ILA that would come to the board formally for approval next month.
You're looking to have the ILA ready for us to vote on next month?
That's right. That's what I'm targeting.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to make sure I understood that. And then I know we've kind of had some dialogue throughout this process. What does it look like on phase 2 and phase 3? Since I know that there has been some challenges in acquiring additional real estate to make that happen, and what might be those expectations as we've been doing our financial planning for the 3 projects that we've committed to. So this is a multi-part question, right? How do we get to phase 2 and phase 3? And are there expectations that you would be back for additional fundings for those phases?
Yes. That is the answer. Yes.
We continue to work with the colleges to potentially acquire land in that area. Western Washington University Olympic College has 2 adjacent parcels, 5-acre lots that we continue to work with the college.
Mayor, could you move a little closer? I don't think we can hear you on the.
I'm sorry. How's that? Is that better?
Better. Could still be a little louder though.
Okay, thank you. I have this curse for a politician. I'm soft spoken. I don't speak very loud. We continue to work with the colleges regarding the 5-acre parcels they have available up there as they move forward with their educational pursuits. They are partnering with us, not formally, but formally soon, as we move forward with this project. So we have every expectation of moving forward with phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. There's also the additional land to the north that we thought had been sold and lost to us, but evidently that parcel has not been acquired. So there are other actions in order to acquire additional land. We have every intention of going through all 3 phases.
But I think it's definitely going to be over a longer timeline. So we're definitely focusing our energy here on phase 1.
Okay. My next question, as we've worked through our timeline and what financial resources we have available to you, if I were to tell you that we don't know that we could guarantee any additional funds for phase 2 and phase 3, will you move forward with phase 1?
Yes. No
Okay.
question on that.
Okay.
Yep. and thank you for that, because I think it's both sides of the equation,
we're-
our side and your
We're
side. Yes.
talking, big projects here over quite a period of time. Will we be here 5 years? Will the PFD be here in 5 years for phase 2 and phase 3? That's to be determined, but we're here for phase 1 now. And that we can accomplish. We know how to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're very transparent as we're trying to work through that. And our financial models tend to be very conservative. I do believe there will be funds available, but I couldn't guarantee anything past what we're looking at today, and wouldn't want to lead you to believe otherwise.
Thank
Very,
you.
very fair.
You took some of my questions, but do we have any other questions from the board?
Chairman, I'd like to add one more thing about the ILA.
Yes.
I don't want to rush and push the ILA. Of course, the caveat is that we'll do everything on our end to work on that. But I also realize too that the city's got to take a look at it. So it's going to be a draft ILA that both the city and the PFD agree to before we bring it to the board for formal approval. Hopefully we can get that done by this next month, but no guarantees, because the language of the ILA sometimes can be a little bit daunting, but we will make every effort on our part to be able to make that happen.
Okay. And I don't believe we need a motion to direct you to work on an ILA. I believe we can just.
No,
do
you
that.
do not need a motion. I just need direction to say move forward with that. Then I will get together with our financial advisors, bond counsel, with Shannon at Barker Creek. We'll take a look at that. I'll get together with our legal counsel, Mr. Lawler. We'll start to work on the draft of that ILA. I'll continue to work with Ms. Botten on that end as well. And then the hope is that we would have an ILA that's ready for review and approval by the board then in the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was something I would just add when we're looking at that ILA, because I think Ms. Botten said something in her presentation that there could possibly be things that may need to be cut as a part of the project. Things will change in their price, as we've seen since all these projects were originally selected. I wasn't even on this board at that time. And we've seen cost escalations. I would just keep it mindful that we'll need to make sure that that's kind of set in stone. So you guys will have to make your decisions based off of what funding is available.
We live in very interesting construction times, and we're very cognizant of that. But this is such a great project. We are going to make this happen. And I have every confidence in my staff. I have every confidence in the PFD that, we all want this to be successful. And the kids need the fields. Okay, they need recreation. As we grow, we need these recreational facilities. It's integral to our community. So I want to thank you for what you're doing.
And I'll also mention too, that if you remember in this slide that I've got back up again, they have a contingency of nearly $1.6 million factored in.
Russ, I have a procedural kind of question on the point of needing to do feasibility study for the Department of Commerce. How does that fall in between when we do ILAs, and when does that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that, again, if the board so directs, my next step with the feasibility study after reviewing it with our crew is then take it to Department of Commerce. I've already reached out to them to let them know that it looks like we're going to be coming with a feasibility study very soon. So it'd be going to the Department of Commerce, and then they're going to do their feasibility review. If you'll remember, we've talked about this in the past. They do not give approval. They do not say yes or no. They just do the feasibility review, and we get that back as well. But we should be able to do both hand in hand.
Right. Russ, that's great news, in that we wouldn't have to do a second feasibility study for this, that this report would be able to serve for your commerce obligation. So I'm glad that you've made that inquiry. That's excellent.
I have to admit, my blood pressure went up a little bit. I thought, oh no, we're going to have to do another one of these, because we've been working a long time on this study.
So I think I missed that. So Department of Commerce will accept this feasibility study to review?
They will. Like I said, I've already had the conversation with the Department of Commerce, giving them a heads up. I have not shared the feasibility study with them yet because I have to do that to our board and our financial folks first, but they do know it's coming.
Oh, that's great.
So for the field replacement in 10 years, is that something you would want us to participate in?
At this point, we're assuming responsibility for that.
Okay,
That's basically capital maintenance and it will be
Yeah.
our property. So it's probably our obligation. Yes.
okay. I'm just wondering, we had an issue with that over the other.
No, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
But that's why our feasibility determination is it's operationally feasible with a capital reserve budgeting component to it. And
I
that's
still have a few wounds on my back. No.
Okay, do we have any other questions at all from the board?
Great.
Okay, with that, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and direct the executive director to go ahead and start working on the draft ILA.
fantastic.
You've got it. We'll get going on it right away.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you all
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
all right, thank you very much.
For your partnership. We are very thankful that we're moving to our next phase with you.
Can I go like yay?
I know, right?
Okay, yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Did we have a question from or comment from the audience that wasn't able to log in?
I sent a chat to Mr. Anderson to ask him, but yeah, it looks like he has his hand raised. So let me go ahead and let Mr. Anderson talk real quick. Okay, Mr. Anderson, go ahead.
Yes, I was glad to see at the special meeting you had on the 19th that there's interest in planning for a new round of project submissions. I think that is arguably overdue to start that process. So I'm glad to see that you're going to consider doing that. And I would also like to encourage you to look into the selection process itself, the rating and manner in which you settle on a favored project. And I think there's probably improvements there that can be made. So I look forward to you all carrying on with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to new business. And this is the special meeting recap and continuing board discussion.
Correct. And with this, I believe that Mr. Bauer is online with us as well. And so please chime in, Mr. Bauer, as we talk about this. But special meeting on January the 19th, we did talk about the financial model. The great thing about what Northwest Financial Advisors did for us is they provided us with a financial model, and we could actually ask questions and say, if we were to fund this request, what's that look like for us going down the road? So I think it was extremely important because the board felt educated enough when the City of Poulsbo came to ask the question tonight that they could give an intelligent, think about it intelligently, and let's move on with forming the ILA. I think that, of course, we didn't talk about just the Poulsbo project. We talked about City of Port Orchard project, and we talked about the county as well. So I think that at this point, if there's any other questions or if there's any of those other projects we'd like to discuss, I think now's the time to do that.
I don't know that I have a question, but I think I would just reiterate my position that we should direct Russ to have additional conversations with the county around their appetite for bonding on behalf of the district. I think we learned, and Scott and Ryan made it pretty apparent that our dollars go a lot further when we're not the one having to hold that bond ourselves. So I would like to encourage that and see if we can't get that working so that we can have a better understanding of where our financial resources lie. As I still do agree that's a very conservative growth number over time. I think we'll see later on tonight, if I reviewed right, we still ended the year at almost 8% growth year over year for last year. And already this month, we're seeing that we have a almost 5% growth just starting off in January here already. So we can see that we're well over double, if not getting close to triple what we have. So I think we'll have the resources. And it goes back to Hank's comment there that we may have the ability to fund some additional fund projects along the way there as well. Did we hear back, because there has been kind of this outlying Circuit of the Northwest, they were supposed to have turned in a feasibility study, but if we have to kind of lock in some assumptions into our financial model, where we stand with that project, because I think we heard that basically we don't have the capacity with our sales tax to move forward.
So first, the Circuit Northwest, no, haven't had no more communication with them. Don't know if the feasibility study has been released or not. It hasn't been shared with us. So, you know, that was really the next. There was two things that we had asked them to do. We had said that if you want us to sign an LOI, there are certain criteria that have to be listed that you have to do and be put into the LOI before we consider voting on it. And that has not been addressed. And then we also asked for the feasibility study, and that has not been addressed either.
Did we give deadlines at all for either of those requests?
We did not. And the last time we heard from Circuit Northwest, they anticipated, I think it was the 17th of January, as to when the feasibility study was due. We're long past that date now. So we've not. I communicated with the Port of Bremerton, because really who should we be communicating with? I communicated with Port of Bremerton this past week and asked them, you know, have you heard anything? And they have not either.
So I guess maybe then my next question would be to the rest of this board on if we think it might be to our best interest to look at putting a date, draw a line in the sand that we need to know what we're playing with here so that we can make some decisions on our other projects.
I think on my end, a date is a good idea, although in a way from the circuit's perspective, you know, to the extent that they're relying on outside people for a feasibility study, I don't know how backed up they are. I know, for example, in my line of work, I have clients, you know, trying to get surveys done. And I was in court today and the judge asked me, well, Mr. Havers, when are you getting that survey? And I said, well, we're set for X date, but I can't tell you after they actually do the survey when we're going to get the report. So I guess I would just be a little leery. I think a deadline of sorts is good, with the understanding that to the extent they're relying on outside experts or so forth, that may not be feasible on their end through no fault of their own. I think, John, you also mentioned about having Russ talk to the county about their appetite for bonding. I thought actually we wanted to look at the City of Port Orchard's appetite for bonding directly themselves as well, whether it's as well or primarily on their project.
You are correct, and we've already looked into that.
Okay.
Both Russ and I can speak for myself. I know I had a conversation, being the representative of Port Orchard on this board, with Mayor Patanzu, who had indicated there isn't any appetite because they don't have the capacity to bond on their behalf. What our folks didn't know is the projects that are currently planned in Port Orchard and the bonding that's going to be happening for those other projects that will eat up their capacity to be able to bond on their own.
Okay, so based on that, then it's either going to be us doing the bonding or have to rely on the county instead.
Correct.
Okay. And if we do it ourselves per the projections at the last meeting, it's going to be more expensive.
Correct.
So going back to the first thing you talked about with regard to talking with the county, I spoke with new county treasurer about 10 days ago and asked him if the county would be open to an initial conversation about them carrying the bond for the Port Orchard project. And he said they would be. So the next step would be to get together. Well, first off, Director Morrissey, one of the things that both you and I need to ask Mayor Patonsu is, when do they anticipate their feasibility study? Because before we get down to nitty gritty details with the county, they're going to want to see that. Obviously, we're going to want to see the feasibility study on that as well. But next step would be to bring our executive committee together with the Kitsap County Treasurer and their CFO. And we would sit down and look at, and of course, our financial advisors, our bond counsel and our legal counsel, to sit down and look at all of it and see what the county would feel comfortable with and what they may agree to. And if they're agreeable to that, then we could then take the next step on crafting a formal ILA. But so I've already breached the subject with the county, and they've already reported back to me that they would be open to a conversation.
Excellent work, Russ.
And to the Circuit Northwest, I mean, we're not obligated to give them any additional money at all. So if they come back to us one day, I say we can listen to them. If not, that's fine too. I mean, we're giving them all we're obligated to give them at this point.
Correct. And remember that we're still, matter of fact, with approval of the consent agenda, we will make the second $144,000 payment. We have 8 more of those to go over the next 8 years. But then that will complete that ILA entirely and our obligation.
Any more discussion on the special meeting? Okay, now we'll move on to item B, the legal services contract extension.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Lawler if he will chime in on this. You have it in front of you. I included it in the packet. The legal service contract extension with Jameson People Cantu. I can tell you with my own experience, it's been an absolute pleasure working with Mr. Lawler. He is a wealth of knowledge. He's been with the PFD from the beginning, so he knows us extremely well. I would certainly hope that we can continue to work with him. Mr. Lawler, I'll ask you a question though. We talked about the extension from January 1 of 2021. Let me get to that. But I didn't see an end date. So it's a contract extension, but do we need to put any kind of an end date on it?
We can, but I don't think we need to. For those of you who have less familiarity with me than others, our legal services have always been on a year-to-year basis, and each year in January we presented the same form to be approved by the board, and in the last iteration of that, the sense of I guess the board was, can we make this simpler and just have a provision in the legal services agreement that says if they agree, the parties can just extend the agreement on a year-to-year basis by a letter, so we don't actually have to prepare the same 6 to 8 page form every year and go through the approval process. So based on that, I just prepared the letter that you have in front of me that simply says, we're extending it on the same terms and conditions, which is a year. And then we updated the client representative section to have Russ and the new office address. Russ, I don't think we need to put in a year, because the phrase "the same terms and conditions" means it's just for a year.
Okay, that's agreeable to me as well.
Yes. I mean, I've been very happy with Mr. Lawler's representation of us over the years. So do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make the motion to accept for you to enter into an additional contract of legal services with Jameson People Cantu as provided on section 3.6 of the agreement.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion carries to extend the contract. You know, we'll move on to the financial reports.
And Mr. Chairman, I have not been able to get in touch with our accountants in the last couple of weeks. So I do not have a financial report for the end of the year 2022 or January 2023. So we'll have to do that here in February. But what I do have is I do have the 2022 rebate summary report. And then I just got information on the 2023 January. So let me go to those real quick. Okay, so as you can see, we finished up at 7.8% year over year over where we were at this last time a year ago. Where our rebate was 192,623. In November, we paid a debt service of 70,083. We had expenses of 30,639, so a net gain of 91,910. Total, we brought in $2.3 million in sales tax rebates, and we averaged month to month $192,042. So overall, a very good year. If you look at 2018 and then moving on, or actually starting way out at 2015 and then continuing to move on, you can see that just year over year, we continue to improve.
Okay, do we have any questions on the sales tax rebate?
Okay, this is the
I don't-
2023.
I was just gonna say, I don't think I have any questions, Mr. Chair, but I would just like to point out, as we had mentioned in our special meeting last month, how conservative those numbers were at 2.5%. And when you look at the last 8 years, we had 10 instances. So not even an eighth of the time were we below the 2.5 projected percent. So just to call out.
Hey, yeah, I do appreciate that. I know that our financial advisors are aware of that as well. I think that our concern is there continues to be a talk of a recession and what that does to us and our bottom line if that were to hit. But if things continue to trend the way they have, then I think that we're going to be just fine. The financial advisors, I think, would agree with that wholeheartedly. For January, we brought in $187,000 in sales tax rebates. This is an increase of 4.7% over this time last year. Our debt service was $64,382 for the month. Our expenses were $20,694, so a net gain of $102,010. So we started off 2023 in really good shape.
Okay, thank you. And
Okay, our next report, for those that are out in the audience, let me see if I can zoom in there so you can kind of see some bottom lines, because what's really important is down here at the bottom. Okay, so this month we have that was part of the consent agenda. We had invoices that came in from every project. And so each one of those is listed below. So the very first one on the left is the Port Orchard Community Events Center. The next one over is the PERC project. The next one over is the Kitsap County project, Port Gamble project. And then the last one is Circuit of the Northwest. if you go down here to the bottom, what's important here is to know what was paid out total in total paid to date for Port Orchard's nearly $2 million, so approximately 10 million left on that. For the city of Poulsbo, we have about 46,700 left. City of Poulsbo on their current ILA, 885,000 still left on the county. And then after making the $144,000 payment, we still owe $588,700. So spent a total of $850,000. If we come over here to the 2023 totals, you'll see what that adds up to for this month. So $231,728 we're approving total paid to date, and then total remaining balances of all of our projects in accordance with the ILAs that we have with those projects. Any questions on up here on the 977 cash fund? Of course, that's our rebate dollars. We have available cash $257,448 right now. Spending $231,000 leaves us about $25,000. What that means is that I will have to go in and invest some funds out of our 977. And right now we currently have about $3 million in reserve. So I will invest probably $250,000 to make it available cash for the 977 for next month's invoices as they come in. And that concludes the financial reports. Any questions on either the project tracking reports or the sales tax rebates? And also, Mr. Bauer, if you have anything that you want to chime in, please do.
Thank you, Russ. I do not.
All right, thank you.
Okay, nothing else from anybody? Okay, now we'll move down to item 7, which is the KPFD new logo revision.
Correct. Yep. This will be our last item. So as directed by the board when I first started, that was to take a look at redoing our logo. And part of that was really putting out to the public who we are. And we felt like one way to do that was to come up with a new logo, kind of identifies herself in modern time, if you will, and express kind of who we are. So we already had one set that we took a look at, but I think the board and myself included felt like it just didn't hit the mark. It actually looked like a rotary symbol, and we certainly didn't want to be confused with that. So we went back to the drawing board. So I sat down with our designers and we came up with this. And what it is it kind of indicates what the PFD does, right? We try to provide buildings and facilities for soccer and trails and bikes and so forth. The other thing too is I was trying to give it some kind of a motion showing that we're constantly in motion. That's what this is all about right here. And then if you remember, we talked about coining a tagline, if you will. So we came up with building communities and enriching lives. So there's really two different versions of this with the outline there. One of those you'll see has got an extra band right here. Well, when I sent it out to the board for review, one of the board members says, you know, I like everything about it except for that extra green band. So what if we were to take that out? So that is what this one does, is that takes it out. So what I'd like to have from the board is I like to have the board's input. If the board is satisfied with it, if we don't need to go back to the drawing board, then I'd like the board to formally approve our new logo. And then we can move forward with rebranding that we'll need to do on our website and everything else.
Okay. I mean, I think it looks very good, but That's just me. So does anyone else have some comments on it?
Sure, Mr. Chair, Russ, I like it as well. I think the only thing I would, if I was going to make changes, would be the colors. Simply because I think I've used this in the past. So many organizations use Seahawks-ish colors that it can get lost in those colors. So that would be my only input. Other than that, I think it looks great. And I could live with these colors. That's just my one call out.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I like it too, though. I am concerned if we're using it to shrink it down on something small, if we're putting it on letterhead or whatnot. For the website, not an issue. We can make it whatever size, but the pictures are going to get lost when we get small. So if we go to use it on something, we might end up tweaking it a little bit because those will just be kind of too fuzzy. And then I too will vote for changing the colors a little bit for the same reason that John brought up.
I'll just echo what everyone said. I like this. I think it's a huge improvement over the rotary-ish kind of gear concept. I like it. It's got movement. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the combination of the color scheme. Just the green kind of looks like a baby poop green, frankly, in terms of the shade. But I like the Seahawks, but I think John's point may be well taken about it may get lost. But I don't know what color scheme to suggest as an alternative. Maybe we just play with that a little bit. But overall, I would approve the design. Just figure out the different change and go from there. And then the trademark attorney in me just says, whatever we do, put the little TM on the bottom right or the top right when we're done with it.
Yeah, I'll register it as a trademark once it gets approved. Believe it or not, that's not green, it's gold.
Oh,
I know it looks completely different that way, but it's actually gold.
okay. I don't know if that's how it's showing up for us online, but it's got some serious green shades. I think when you said that, Russ, Aaron was like, whoa, saw her face there. Yeah, it's coming across pretty green.
No, I agree. And when I first saw it, I said, no, that's green, that's Seahawks. And they said, no, it's actually gold. So the final will definitely look gold.
Okay.
Now, if it's gold and that dark navy blue, everybody satisfied with that color combination?
I'm going to throw up a little roadblock again. I know when we're making signs and whatnot that yellow, which is not the same as gold, but similar, yellow doesn't show very well a lot of the time. So I'd like to see it with what the true color is going to look like on it. And I still would like to see it in a normal size and then a smaller size too, so we can see if it gets blurry, because we can always simplify it if we go small and then use the more detailed one for a bigger one. So I'd like to see the true color then.
Yeah, certainly. Well, it sounds like we're on the right page. At least everybody appreciates the design. Director Leadham, I was actually thinking maybe we put a highlight around each one of those icons so they did stand out a little bit more. I'll continue working with the designers, but at least it looks like we're heading in the right direction now.
So I guess going back to tweak it a little bit, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
what I'll do is I'll continue to tweak it and then I'll bring it back again. There's no hurry. We don't have to do this tomorrow. So I'll bring it back in February and we can take a look again.
Okay.
And Russ, when you're talking to the designers, since I'm big about the whole size thing, will you ask them to show us what it would look like, say, on a business card?
I sure will. You bet.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And anything for the good of the order? Nope. Then the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.